everyone. This is Bea from the marketing team of WeGrow VA. We're back with another interview with another awesome guest. Over here at WeGrow VA, alongside our pursuit of helping businesses and people grow into their full potential through virtual assistants, we're also in pursuit of meaningful conversations that push us and our audience to grow even further in any aspect of their life. And today's conversation will be no different. We'll be talking about creating and reinforcing community through fundraising with Kia Croom. Also, if you want to watch or listen to our other conversations with other awesome people, then head on over to our YouTube channel. Just search for We Grow VA or check out the link in our bio. So, all right, let's get this started. Let me introduce our awesome guest for today. So, with over 21 years of experience with nonprofit fundraising and digital marketing, with a demonstrated track record of helping people of color led nonprofits advance their missions and movements, Kia Croom's work intersects with equity, diversity, and inclusion and promotes racial equity and justice for Black and Brown communities. She is also the host of the Black Fundraisers Podcast. You can find it through Spotify or any other podcast streaming service. With Kia's skills and experiences, as well in relationship building and management, resource development strategy, and KPI outcomes management, she is truly a force to be reckoned with. And today, we want to talk to Kia about creating and reinforcing community through fundraising. So she's already here. Hi, Kia. How are you?
Hi, I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good now. Yeah. So just
Good.
let's just get started. Let's hop right to
Yeah,
it.
why don't we?
So I first wanted to start this with how would you define fundraising to a 5-year-old?
Yeah, I would tell that 5-year-old, and I think I've done this. I've discussed it with my son, who's going to be 18 here in a couple of weeks. He's been on this journey with me, the most of this incredible journey. I explained it to him by saying in so many words, there are people and communities that need. And the work that I do via fundraising helps to ensure people that have certain needs, like whether it's housing, whether it's food, whether it's education and learning, that they get access to those things that they need at no
Very,
cost to them in
very,
most cases.
yeah, very straight to the point. At its core, it's really just about helping community, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you obviously have had quite the journey yourself with fundraising, like over 21 years of, your life. That is something to applaud, and that's really amazing.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you throughout the years, how, with your observation, how has fundraising changed over the years? What are your personal observations?
Yeah, I would say that fundraising has innovated in some interesting ways. There's a lot more that we're able to do through automation that we weren't doing or weren't so thoughtful about doing when I first entered the space. For instance, if you want to be thoughtful about folks joining your subscription list if you're a nonprofit. Automation is the key, right? To make sure that you're not missing anybody, to make sure that you're kind of omnipresent across channels, across email, across social, right? When I started doing this work, you communicated with people primarily by phone and email. And you might have gotten on their list some kind of way, or you might be on their direct mail list. People weren't leveraging social quite as much as we're encouraged to leverage social, or should be leveraging social currently. So I think automation, I think the need to be omnipresent. And one other thing that I would add to that is I think that by design of diversity, the space is definitely more diverse. It's arguable how much more inclusive it is. Have there been gains in the way of inclusion over the last 20 years? Yeah, I would say there have, and there have certainly been gains in terms of diversity. I'm seeing more Black and Brown nonprofit leaders and founders, seeing more Black and Brown people employed as fundraisers, we still have a long way to go, but there's definitely been progress in the struggle.
And I love to see that progress over the years as well. And with everything that you mentioned, automation especially, it really is technology, because
Absolutely.
yeah, as we go through the times, and I guess you mentioned like the way to reach out to people before was obviously more like cold calls and such. it's
Yeah,
it's you put in a lot of effort, and obviously that effort is important, but the automation and being able to kind of like use technology to reach a wider audience, or like reach farther than we usually would by foot, I guess, makes
definitely.
all the difference. So I wanted to ask next is that, what do you think are misconceptions about fundraising that you would permanently bust if you could?
Misconceptions about fundraising, that's a really good one. Might have me stumped a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say misconceptions include,
I guess maybe let's think about in the way that maybe some how about this? Maybe when you're approaching someone to kind of like listen to your call, and maybe
okay,
they're apprehensive because they don't understand why, or like what, or like maybe their role in it. How do you think you would like, I don't want to say the word persuade, but I guess have that discussion with them? Because I think the misconceptions come out when you don't really know the subject, right?
yeah, I've got somewhere to go with this, right?
Okay.
So misconceptions. I think that a cardinal misconception that I see is nonprofit organizations approach philanthropies with a very beholden, give me what you can kind of mentality, when I think that nonprofits should be standing tall and confident and matter of fact about what their value proposition is and why philanthropy needs them. Because here's the gag. The gag is this: philanthropy, which we know is love of humankind or love of mankind, right? Philanthropy needs nonprofits just as much, if not more, than nonprofits need philanthropy. So I believe it's a relationship of interdependency more than it is this philanthropy that's got this iron fist full of dollars that nonprofits need to be fearful or have any apprehension or second guessing themselves. I think that that's a big misconception. I think that nonprofits don't really consider or leverage the full weight that they carry, right, in the work that they're doing. Yeah, there might be program officers or program administrators. I don't like using the word officer, but it's inherent. It's a word that we use, right? In this space, um, that program officer might have a fiduciary, a responsibility to that philanthropy, but that program officer cannot do what your agency is doing to affect social change, to improve community outcomes. So I feel like nonprofits should be sticking their chest out and standing tall and looking at themselves as a partner to nonprofits and not like just a grantee, if you will,
Yeah, I hear you on that.
relegating themselves. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's a big misconception.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. It's a matter of understanding that philanthropy and nonprofits are, they have goals, and you need to see that they're
Absolutely.
equals, and
Absolutely.
partnering together will only just bring in, more strength to both causes,
Absolutely.
right? Love that. Thank you, Kia.
Oh, thank you.
So, logistically, in terms of logistics, how would you
Yeah.
compare like real life fundraisers, like face to face, versus online fundraising campaigns? Like, what are your observations with communities that way? Because it's very different when you're really talking to a person in front of you versus like online, you're chatting or like it's virtual. What do you think, like logistically, or like how would you compare them?
You know what? I don't know that I would compare and contrast because what COVID taught us is that we had to pivot, right?
Yeah, I hear
I
you.
couldn't meet with a person face to face. I could meet with them face to face via Zoom or Google Meets or Teams, but face to face was not a possibility, right? I could not conduct in person fundraisers during the pandemic. I was able to pivot and conduct virtual fundraisers. Were they as successful and if not more? Yeah, in some cases they were, given the context, right? The fact that we were cut off from human, interpersonal, one on one, in person interactions, all we had to do was perform in a virtual environment. And there are so many organizations that successfully did that, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's progress. And I do not think that things are going to revert. I think that in person in a lot of cases is preferred depending on what you're doing fundraising wise. Are you cultivating? Are you having a stewardship? However, I think that the work is agile enough to where it can be effectively done in a virtual environment. I do.
I love that. I didn't think of it that way. Yeah. So, onto something a little, I guess, like maybe happier or depending on your answer, I guess. What do you think is like a in your memory? What is a personal fundraising highlight for you?
Yeah,
Like a
so
major
there's so
win?
many. There's so many. One fundraising highlight for me is work that I did relatively early in my career in the housing and homeless space. I was working with a really small grassroots faith nonprofit in Atlanta called Hope Through Divine Intervention. And when I got involved with the organization, it was a single service organization providing emergency shelter to what we called at the time dually diagnosed, right? Chronically homeless.
Oh, okay.
And with this whole movement of inclusion, I think back and I'm like, oh, that isn't really good. But that was how this particular subpopulation of homelessness was classified as, and they were even called difficult to house, right?
Hmm.
Like these were really terms that were used, and we're talking early 2000s. I
Yeah.
would never put something on paper that suggested that about somebody in this day and age, right? And I don't even know why we thought it was cool to do that back then, but that's a whole nother conversation,
I
right?
hear you, yeah.
So anyway, this particular group, this subpopulation, you had the general homeless population, right? This subpopulation had received such a bad rap in the community that with Hope to Divine Intervention coming forward and saying, you know what, this is our specialty in housing this particular subpopulation, we do it, we have encouraging outcomes. These individuals come into the program, they get stable, and where there's substance use history, they get clean and sober. If they're employable, they ultimately go to work or achieve some kind of greater self determination outcome, right? Essentially, after talking with the founders and the board and learning where the organization wanted to go, right? The organization wanted to do more than just that single service emergency shelter it was providing. It had aspirations to become an affordable housing provider, right? Providing affordably priced housing in a high rent community of Atlanta. So what I did was I generated more than $2 million in funding to
Wow.
launch a 36 unit affordable housing complex. I wrote a $1.7 million capital grant through what is now called, I believe it's called the Atlanta Trust or Atlanta Housing Trust. Back then, it was the Atlanta Development Authority or ADA. And I leveraged those dollars and secured more than $500,000 a year in project-based vouchers from the Atlanta Housing Authority. So this apartment complex was purchased by the organization, demoed, and the organization was able to leverage those dollars and secure a low-cost loan to redevelop a 36 unit complex that became home for 34 formerly homeless or folks that previously experienced homelessness, right? And to this day, that community has served so many people at critical times in their life, right? And ensured they had a safe and stable, affordable place to live. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm fortunate that next month I have the pleasure of traveling to Atlanta as the organization Hope to Divine Intervention will be sunsetting that initiative after 15 years, 16 years of providing that service, affordable permanent housing, to celebrate with them and celebrate all of their accomplishments therein. So I'm really, really proud of that.
Wow, Kia. 36 units and 34 people, correct? Yeah. That is so
Yeah.
amazing to hear. And I just wanted to say congratulations on that, especially so early on in your career. I bet that was, well, I don't want to speak for you, but hearing that story makes me think of how that would motivate me if I were in your place to help these people. I think, well, housing is so hard and homelessness is rough. And I don't think, well, people, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but people have their judgments of homeless people. And if you
Yeah, they
don't,
do.
yeah, and if you don't really know the details of that, some people would say just like work harder, but they don't understand the
Right.
needs that you need and that having a stable home to live in, shelter is literally a necessity, when people,
Absolutely.
right? So,
Absolutely. I mean, the way that I look at this is there so homelessness is a symptom of a bigger systemic issue, right? You could call it whatever you want. You could call it, I mean, how many folks do you know, right, that still aren't earning what is considered a livable wage
ooh,
right now?
that is
You
such a
know,
sore
right. How many
question.
people do you know? I mean, I encounter multiple people. I encounter people who are earning annual salaries, right, per annum, and are still challenged with affording rent in high cost regions like the Washington, D.C. region, right? The DMV region or California, right? So the judgments, yeah, I mean, I hear people call you, get a job. You see somebody panhandling, and occasionally they'll encounter a person that says, get a job. Well, for some people, that isn't necessarily a possibility. Like I've
Yeah.
encountered people who were living with disabilities that were debilitative and precluded them from being able to work, right? So them being homeless is, like I said, result of a really systemic issue of fragmentation of services for individuals that are living with debilitating disabilities that aren't necessarily employable for whatever reason, right? It's not just a person being shiftless and lazy and, not wanting to be a part of society, right? And it's just one of those things. There are structural inequities that result in homelessness
Yeah.
across a big gamut, whether you're an unaccompanied person or whether you're a family, a single family or two-parent families. I've seen two-parent families find themselves homeless. It can happen to just about anybody, especially when we consider the current economic climate that we are in and the inflation rates. Like, it's crazy right now.
It
So
truly
this could
is.
be anybody's narrative, if we're being really, really honest.
I definitely hear you and I echo everything that you say. I very much agree with you. It's rough and the least that we can do is as individuals is to show some more compassion and be there for
Absolutely.
people. It's not
Absolutely.
it's not that hard to be compassionate, honestly, I think, right?
I agree. And that's why I'm in the space. I mean, to have more than compassion, right? Compassion is key, but to really come to the board with solutions for communities that are forgotten about, that are voiceless, and that are sorely underserved. That's why I do the work.
And we love you for that, Kia, and more power to
Thank
you,
you.
obviously. Thank you so much for the work that you do, especially over the years. And I hope that everyone who's watching or listening is also going to be inspired or maybe find something thought provoking from it. Yeah.
No, I sure appreciate it. No, that gives me all the great feels. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I wanted to move forward with what
Yeah.
do you, yeah. So what do you think are the biggest challenges when it comes to fundraising? Like where and how do you even start? How do you even get help to do this if you want to go into fundraising?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest challenges right now stem from some of the internal work philanthropy must do to become more equitable and inclusive. I see organizations that are doing remarkable work. Many of them are founded and operated by Black and Brown people. They may not be as connected as some. They may not be on certain philanthropies' radars, but these nonprofits are literally the shoulders for communities. I think about those feeding programs where kids and senior citizens are able to get meals as a result of this program, right? Where their other resources run out, right? You've got after school programs serving children and youth. I think about the young lady in Washington, D.C. that came on my radar during the pandemic that was literally feeding children in the neighborhood because we saw a lot of food insecurity come to bear, right? Come to light when kids weren't able to go to school. We saw that kids were literally going to school to get meals and even clean clothes and socks, right? So when schools were closed, a lot of folks were hurting. I think about those organizations and how vital they are to communities and how philanthropy isn't necessarily always doing the due diligence to find them, right?
Yeah.
Philanthropy wants organizations to find and seek them out versus coming from behind the computer or behind the phone line and going into community and identifying wonderful charities that are doing work that's moving communities and changing lives. So I think it's a challenge to break through that, right? And marshal resources for vital programs, for folks that are very, very entrenched in the work. And I'm really hoping that that changes. And I'm doing my best to encourage philanthropy to be more inclusive and to do a better job of seeking out these organizations instead of positing if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, I
No,
hear
you
you.
can build it, but it's some people that
Mhm.
are going to miss it because they're on the front lines in the community doing the work. Can you go find them?
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. You need to find each other, I guess, to a degree, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a real challenge right now
I hear you. I hear you.
for a lot of agencies.
Definitely. Now, sorry, yeah, excuse me. Um, I wanted to ask you, we're down to our last question. Last tips or advice for anyone who also wants to pursue the path that you're in.
Sure. What I would tell them is, depending on where they are in their journey, to get a mentor if they are in the sector, in the nonprofit sector, have an interest or affinity for fundraising, maybe they work in programs. I want to encourage you and say that you can always pivot, you can always learn the craft of fundraising. It's not scientific, it's really about relationships and how relational you are. If you're an outgoing person, you don't mind reaching out, you don't mind persisting and stewarding and engaging folks. This is work that you could do easily, right? Get a mentor, identify what kind of causes make you feel warm and bubbly about or you're passionate about, and make it a goal to engage with some. I encourage people to volunteer or intern where they may be inexperienced or maybe even have some experience to the degree that they can, right? If they don't have experience, that's what I did. I was volunteering and my life changed and I found my way into fundraising and found my rhythm. So I'm not encouraging folks to, especially in this climate, to just give up their time in excess. But if you're really wanting to get some experience, um, and you've got a cause that you love and want to engage with, I encourage you to do that and not to rule out, a short volunteer engagement just to get a little bit of experience under your belt. And I would leverage that moving
I,
on from that.
I love that. And I hope that our listeners and watchers who have been watching all the way to this part of the video, to, I guess, be inspired by that. I think, yeah, there is a craft to it, and like you said, it's not really scientific, and I think at the core it's if you want to help and you want to go to the next level. We mentioned it earlier, like having compassion, but to actually go like a step above, or like the
Mm-hmm.
next level is to help create action and solutions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So wow, Kia, this whole conversation has been very inspiring as well for me. Made me think also about my own community over here as well. And I have been thinking also on, like, I guess how I could be better part of it. But like you said, no pressure. And it's a matter of understanding also where you are in your place and how much you also kind of want to reach out. And yeah, I just loved our whole conversation, just from
Me
knowing
too.
where you started and your early, your early parts of your career with the housing. That story, I don't know, it hits also for me now when I'm thinking about it again. It's really inspiring, and I guess I really just want people to be more. What I mean is, like, to get from this to that, other than being more to have compassion, is that we can do our part to like help each other. especially over the past 2 years, we really needed each other, all
Yeah,
over the
absolutely.
world. This whole pandemic showed us that community is so essential and we need each other. It's not always just about yourself and I guess, your own
No,
bubble, right?
agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So, Kia, I wanted to ask, where can we find you? like,
Sure.
this is promo time. Yeah.
Yeah, so my firm is Kia Croom Fundraising and Philanthropy. We are where inclusion is rooted in our work. We partner with organizations that are serving Black and Brown communities exclusively, right? That are advancing, I should say, racial justice or racial equity, that are forward thinking, that value diversity. And we are all about inclusive fundraising strategies where we center on Black and Brown voices, where we center on narrative change, and we really walk out our values around inclusion because we believe inclusion is as inclusion does. And I'm proud to say, Kia Croom Fundraising and Philanthropy is a Black woman owned firm, full scale fundraising firm. I'm really proud of that in a space that has been predominantly white. I've been able to build out a full scale fundraising firm that really caters to organizations improving outcomes for Black and Brown people in communities. If that's you, I want to work with you. Visit my website at www.kiacroom.com. In addition to our fundraising work, we provide coaching for fundraisers and aspiring fundraisers, executives. We provide DE and I support for organizations that want to codify anti-racist policies and really take strides toward becoming and walking out anti-racism, becoming an anti-racist organization. So we're all about justice and inclusion. And I want to work with you. I want to engage with you. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, visit the website, drop me a line, email me at kia@kiacroom.com. Really easy. You can also find me on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook at Kia Croom, and Twitter, I am Kia Croom. And I hope to be in touch with you. I'm all about community, and I'm really serious about the work of improving outcomes in communities of color.
Love that. And don't worry, all of Kia's links will be in the description box.
Cool.
So,
That's
all right. So, and don't forget, if you're a business owner that is in need of growing your business to achieve entrepreneurial excellence by hiring a virtual assistant, or you're just curious to know more about what we can offer, then make sure to get in touch with us, WeGrow VA. Head over to our website, wegrowva.com, to schedule a call. And don't forget to follow WeGrow VA over on all of our social media. We're basically everywhere. To be updated on the latest ins and outs on anything and everything. Links will be in the bio and the description box. And again, I just wanted to say thank you to Kia and everyone who has watched this video. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
all right.